If people don't listen when you speak, it's not bad luck. It's not confidence. It's not intelligence. It's how you talk. Your words are leaking authority, your tone is asking for permission, and your language is quietly telling people you are optional. Leaders are not louder, they are clearer. They don't persuade. They declare. They don't explain. They decide. This audiobook will strip out the speaking habits that make you sound weak, replace them with leader-level communication, and train you to speak in a way that forces respect before results ever show up. Talk like a leader, or accept being treated like a follower. Chapter 1. Stop sounding like you're asking. Listen carefully. This is where most people lose authority before they even finish a sentence. They don't say anything wrong. They don't lack intelligence. They don't lack ideas. They lack finality. They speak as if they're asking for permission to exist in the conversation. They speak as if someone else needs to approve their words. And the moment that happens, authority disappears. You have a choice. You can speak like someone who is waiting to be accepted, or you can speak like someone who has already decided. That's the key. Most people don't realize this, but they speak in questions even when they think they're making statements. Their voice rises at the end of a sentence. Their tone floats instead of landing. Their words sound unfinished. It sounds like this. I think this is the right approach. We could try this option. That might work. Nothing is technically wrong, but psychologically everything is wrong. A rising tone signals uncertainty. Uncertainty signals submission, and submission invites dismissal. You don't need their permission. Authority begins with how your sentences end. Leaders end sentences. Followers leave them open. Statements create authority. Questions create doubt. Say that again. Statements create authority. Questions create doubt. Here's what's really happening. When you end a sentence with a rising tone, your brain is saying, I'm not sure. Your voice is asking the listener to complete the thought for you. You are handing them control, and people respond to that immediately. They interrupt you. They challenge you. They ignore you. They feel comfortable correcting you, not because they're bad people, but because your voice told them they could. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. You don't fix this by feeling more confident. You fix it by changing a mechanical habit. That's the key. Leaders speak in completed thoughts. Their sentences land. They stop. They allow silence. They don't rush to soften the impact. They don't add verbal padding. They don't trail off emotionally. They speak. And then they let the words sit. Silence does not weaken authority. Silence confirms it. You have a choice. You can rush to fill space because silence makes you uncomfortable, or you can let silence force others to adjust. Leaders let others adjust. Pay attention to this. When someone speaks with a flat, settled tone, your brain interprets it as certainty, even if you disagree, even if you're skeptical. Why? Because certainty sounds resolved, and unresolved people do not sound certain. This is why people with less knowledge but stronger delivery often dominate rooms. This is why overthinkers get ignored. This is why explaining yourself too much backfires. You don't need their permission. You need control over your endings. Here is the rule. Every sentence you speak should sound like it could end a discussion, not because you're aggressive, not because you're arrogant, but because you've decided. Leaders speak after deciding. Followers speak while deciding. That difference is audible. Now let's talk about emotional sentences. Most people load their sentences with emotional uncertainty. They add hesitation words. They soften conclusions. I just feel like, I'm not sure, but this might be wrong, but those phrases don't make you humble. They make you optional. It's not about ego. It's about clarity. You can be calm without being soft. You can be respectful without being unsure. That's the discipline. Here's a practical correction. For the next week, do this. Lower your tone at the end of every sentence. Pause for 1 full second after speaking. Do not add follow-up explanations unless asked. That's it. This is not complicated, but it is uncomfortable at first. Why? Because you've trained yourself to seek reassurance through speech. You have a choice. Break the habit, or keep sounding like you're asking. Let's be clear. You are not removing questions from your language. You are removing uncertainty from your statements. Questions are tools. Statements are foundations. Leaders use questions strategically. Followers leak questions unconsciously. That's the key. Notice how this changes interactions. When you speak with finality, people listen longer. They interrupt less. They respond more carefully, not because you demanded respect, but because your delivery commanded attention. Authority is not announced. It's demonstrated, sentence by sentence, and here's the truth most people avoid. If people consistently talk over you, ignore you, or challenge you, it's not them. It's your delivery. That's not an insult. That's leverage. Because delivery is trainable. You don't need their permission. You need repetition. Say this internally every time you speak. Finish the sentence. Let it land. Silence is allowed. Statements create authority. Questions create doubt. Again, statements create authority. Questions create doubt. This chapter is about one thing: ending your sentences like someone who expects to be heard. Once you master this, everything else builds faster. Tone stabilizes. Presence increases. Respect compounds. But this is only the beginning. Because even a firm sentence can lose power if you keep explaining it. You've stopped sounding like you're asking. Now it's time to stop justifying. Chapter 2. Eliminate explaining from your language. This chapter will feel uncomfortable. Good. That's how you know it matters. Because explaining is the most socially accepted way people give away authority. They don't realize they're doing it. They think they're being clear. They think they're being helpful. They're not. They're negotiating their own position in real time. You have a choice. You can speak from decisions, or you can speak from insecurity disguised as logic. That's the key. Let's get something straight. Explaining is not the same as clarifying. Clarifying strengthens authority. Explaining weakens it. Why? Because explaining usually comes before anyone asks. It's preemptive defense. And the moment you defend a decision that hasn't been challenged, you reveal doubt. You don't need their permission. Watch how most people speak. They make a statement. Then they immediately justify it. Then they add context. Then they add backstory. Then they circle back, just to be clear. By the time they finish, the original point has lost all weight. It's not about intelligence. It's about discipline. Leaders discipline their mouth. Here's the brutal truth. The more you explain, the more people assume your decision is weak. Because strong decisions don't beg to be understood. They wait. That's the key. Think about high authority environments. Courtrooms, boardrooms, military briefings. Statements come first. Explanations come only if requested. Why? Because explanations invert the power dynamic. The explainer is chasing understanding. The listener is judging value. You don't want to chase. Most people explain because silence scares them. They speak. They pause. They feel exposed. So they talk again. That second wave of speech is where authority dies. You have a choice. Sit in silence or fill it with weakness. Let's talk about the psychology. When you explain, you are telling the listener, I'm not sure this stands on its own. You are inviting evaluation instead of compliance. Leaders do not invite evaluation unless they want feedback. Followers explain to feel safe. That's not leadership language. Here are common explaining phrases that destroy authority. Let me explain why. The reason is because I just want to clarify. What I mean is, notice the pattern. You are guiding the listener toward agreement instead of assuming it. You don't need their permission. Agreement is not requested. It's assumed. Now here's the rule you must internalize. Say the decision, stop. If someone needs more, they will ask. And if they ask, you answer briefly, precisely, without emotion. That's the key. Let's run an example. Weak version. We're going with option B because after looking at the data and considering different outcomes, it seems like the safest approach given the timeline. Leader version. We're going with option B. Silence. If questioned, it aligns with the timeline. Stop. That's it. No storytelling. No convincing. No overserving. People respect boundaries in speech the same way they respect boundaries in behavior. If you overgive verbally, they will overtake psychologically. You have a choice. Control your output, or let others control the frame. Here's what explaining really is. It's fear of being misunderstood. It's fear of being challenged. It's fear of being wrong. Leadership is not the absence of error. It's comfort with being questioned after deciding. That's the discipline. Now let's address the biggest excuse. But what if people think I'm rude? They won't. They will think you are grounded. Rudeness is emotional. Directness is neutral. You are not cutting people off. You are cutting excess. Practical training begins now. For the next 7 days, make your point in one sentence. Stop speaking. Wait. If silence stretches, let it stretch. You are training your nervous system to tolerate authority. You have a choice. Shrink or settle. Notice what happens. People lean in. They ask better questions. They challenge you less emotionally. Why? Because you've removed the opening. Explanations create openings. Final statements close them. Say it again. Explanations create openings. Final statements close them. There is a time to explain. Teaching, mentoring, strategic persuasion. But leadership communication is not constant teaching. Leadership is direction. Direction does not ramble. Here's another hard truth. If you need to explain everything, you don't trust your own authority yet. That's not a moral failure. That's a skill gap, and skill gaps are fixable. You don't need their permission. You need repetition. The strongest speakers sound almost boring. Why? Because they're predictable. They speak. They stop. They listen. Predictability builds trust. Trust builds authority. That's the key. Let me repeat this until it sticks. Speak once. Speak clearly. Stop. No emotional cleanup. No justification. No apology. You are not being harsh. You are being stable. By eliminating explaining, something shifts. Your voice lowers. Your pace slows. Your presence expands. People feel it even if they can't describe it. Authority is felt before it is understood. This chapter is not telling you to be silent. It's teaching you to be deliberate. Every extra sentence must earn its place. If it doesn't strengthen the decision, remove it. That's discipline. You've learned how to end sentences. You've learned how to stop explaining. Now we move deeper. Because even clear, brief speech can fail if it's rushed. Control isn't just what you say. It's how fast you say it. Chapter 3. Speak slower or be ignored. Faster speed exposes weakness. Not intelligence. Not effort. Weakness. When you speak too fast, your nervous system is leaking. Your body is signaling urgency, and urgency signals lack of control. You have a choice. You can rush your words because you're afraid of losing attention, or you can slow down and command it. That's the key. Most people speak fast for one reason. They're trying to get it all out before they're interrupted, before they're challenged, before they're dismissed. So they compress ideas. They stack sentences. They remove pauses. And in doing so, they erase authority. You don't need their permission. You need pace. Here's the truth no one tells you. Fast speech tells the listener, I'm nervous. Slow speech tells the listener, I'm in control. Control is attractive. Control is trustworthy. Control sounds calm. Leaders don't rush because they don't feel chased. Followers speak like they're racing the room. Let's break the psychology. When someone speaks slowly, your brain works harder to track them. Attention increases. Anticipation builds. When someone speaks fast, your brain filters them as noise. Speed reduces weight. Slowness adds gravity. That's the key. Think about every person you've ever perceived as powerful. They didn't rush. They didn't fill space. They let silence stretch. Their words felt heavy because they gave them time to land. Authority lives in the pause. Most people fear pauses. They think silence means confusion. They think silence means weakness. They think silence means they're losing the room. The opposite is true. Silence shifts pressure outward. When you pause, others start thinking. They adjust. They lean in. You don't need their permission. Let them work. Fast speech is emotional speech. It's driven by anxiety, excitement, or fear of being ignored. Slow speech is regulated speech. Leaders regulate first. Then they speak. It's not about charisma. It's about nervous system control. That's discipline. Here's what speed really communicates. Fast is reactive. Slow, deliberate. Reactive people respond. Deliberate people decide. And decision makers are followed. Now let's get practical. Most people don't speak fast all the time. They speed up at the wrong moments. When challenged, when explaining, when trying to sound smart, that's when authority matters most. And that's when they lose it. You have a choice. Slow down under pressure, or reveal instability. Here's a rule you must internalize. When tension rises, your speed must drop. Say it again. When tension rises, your speed must drop. That's the key. Let's run an example. Someone questions your decision. Weak response. Well, what I meant was that based on the situation and what we saw earlier, leader response. Pause. This is the direction. Pause. We're moving forward. That's it. Notice the difference. Same content, different control. Slow speech forces respect because it forces listening. People can interrupt fast talkers. Interrupting a slow speaker feels rude, so they wait. And waiting gives you power. Another mistake people make. They speed up at the end of sentences. They rush conclusions. They want to soften the impact and escape the moment. Don't. Endings matter. Finish slow. Finish flat. Finish settled. Statements create authority. Questions create doubt. Speed creates noise. Pace creates presence. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you speak fast, it's because you don't trust your words yet. Again, not a flaw, a signal. Confidence is not loudness. It's patience. You don't need to convince quickly if you believe deeply. You don't need their permission. Training this is simple, not easy. For the next week, cut your speaking speed by 20%. Add a 1-second pause after key sentences. Breathe through your nose before responding. That's it. No tricks, no hacks. This retrains your nervous system to tolerate authority. Expect resistance. People may try to interrupt. They may fill silence for you. They may get uncomfortable. Good. That means the dynamic is shifting. You have a choice. Hold the pause, or collapse back into speed. Notice something powerful. When you slow down, your words become fewer. When your words become fewer, each one matters more. Scarcity creates value, even in speech. That's the key. Leaders are not performers. They are anchors. They slow the room down. They stabilize chaos. They bring order through presence. Fast speech adds chaos. Slow speech reduces it. And people follow the person who reduces chaos. Let me repeat this until it locks in. You are not paid for speed. You are respected for control. Slow down. Let silence work. Let others adjust. You don't need their permission. By mastering pace, something shifts internally. Your heart rate lowers. Your thoughts organize. Your confidence stops depending on reaction. Presence replaces performance. That's leadership. You've learned how to end sentences. You've learned how to stop explaining. You've learned how to slow your pace. Now we move into something deeper. Because even slow, clear speech fails if it's emotionally loaded. Control isn't just pace, it's emotional restraint. Chapter 4. Cut emotional language without becoming cold. This is where most people get confused. They hear, control your emotions, and think it means becoming robotic, detached, cold. That's not leadership. That's avoidance. Leadership is emotional discipline, not emotional absence. You have a choice. You can let emotions leak into your language and weaken your presence, or you can regulate emotion and speak with calm authority. That's the key. Let's start with the problem. Most people don't realize how emotional their language is. Not dramatic emotion, subtle emotion. Words that reveal frustration. Words that reveal excitement. Words that reveal insecurity. Even when the message is correct, the tone betrays them. You don't need their permission. You need control. Here's the rule. Emotion should inform decisions. Emotion should never drive speech. The moment emotion drives your language, you lose authority. Why? Because emotional language feels reactive, and reaction signals weakness. Leaders respond. Followers react. That difference is audible. Listen to how emotionally loaded speech sounds. This is really important to me. I feel strongly about this. I'm honestly frustrated right now. Nothing is wrong with those sentences in personal conversations. But in leadership moments, they shift the frame. They move focus from the decision to the speaker's internal state. That's not leadership language. Leadership language centers outcomes, not feelings. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about filtering it. You still feel. You just don't broadcast. That's discipline. Here's what emotional language does psychologically. It invites sympathy instead of respect. It opens debate instead of direction. It makes the listener feel equal instead of guided. Leadership is not equality in speech. It's responsibility. You have a choice. Speak to be understood emotionally, or speak to be followed. Let's clarify something important. Calm is not cold. Calm is regulated. Cold is disconnected. Leaders stay connected. They just don't spill. They acknowledge emotion internally. Then they choose language deliberately. That's the key. Here's a common mistake. People think removing emotional words will make them sound harsh. It won't. It will make them sound grounded. Harshness comes from tension. Calm directness comes from control. People can feel the difference. Let's run an example. Emotional version. I'm really disappointed that this wasn't handled properly. Leader version. This wasn't handled properly. That's it. Same message. More authority. The emotion is implied, not displayed. Another example. Emotional version. I'm excited about this opportunity, and I really think it could be great. Leader version. This opportunity has strong upside. Stop. Emotion removed. Clarity increased. Here's the pattern you must recognize. Emotional language centers you. Neutral language centers reality. Leaders describe reality. They don't narrate their inner world. You don't need their permission. Let's talk about emotional intensifiers. Words like really, very, extremely. Honestly, these words don't strengthen statements. They weaken them. They signal that the base statement isn't strong enough on its own. Remove them. Say it clean. That's discipline. Now let's talk about tone under stress. This is where leaders separate themselves. When pressure hits, most people's language becomes emotional fast. Their pitch rises. Their words speed up. Their sentences soften. Leaders do the opposite. They slow down. They lower tone. They simplify language. Pressure reveals habits. You have a choice. Train now, or leak later. Here's a rule you must memorize. The more intense the situation, the simpler your language must become. Say it again. The more intense the situation, the simpler your language must become. That's the key. Practical training starts here. For the next week, remove emotional qualifiers from your speech. Describe facts before opinions. Pause before responding to emotional stimuli. This is not about acting calm. It's about becoming calm. You'll notice resistance. People may try to pull emotion out of you. They may escalate. They may provoke. That's not accidental. Emotion gives them leverage. Don't give it. You don't need their permission. Here's something powerful. When you speak without emotional charge, others project emotion onto you. They assume confidence. They assume certainty. They assume control. Authority grows in the space you don't fill. Let me repeat this until it locks in. Emotion felt internally is strength. Emotion displayed verbally is leakage. Control the leak. This chapter is not about becoming distant. It's about becoming stable. Stability makes people trust you under pressure. Trust makes people follow you. That's leadership. You've now learned how to end sentences with authority. Stop explaining. Control pace. Regulate emotion. But there's still one major leak left. Talking too much. Even calm, slow, neutral speech loses power when it's excessive. Now we cut volume. Chapter 5. Say less and mean more. This is where authority either compounds or collapses, because even perfect tone, perfect pace, and perfect emotional control mean nothing if you talk too much. Volume kills power, not loudness. Quantity. You have a choice. You can speak to feel involved, or you can speak to create impact. That's the key. Most people believe talking more increases influence. It doesn't. It dilutes it. Every extra sentence reduces the weight of the sentence before it. Every unnecessary word lowers perceived value. Authority is not built by abundance. It's built by scarcity. You don't need their permission. You need restraint. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People who talk a lot are rarely perceived as leaders. They're perceived as participants. Leaders intervene. They don't narrate. They enter conversations with intention, not momentum. That's discipline. Let's look at the psychology. When someone speaks sparingly, the listener pays attention. They anticipate. They remember. When someone speaks constantly, the listener filters. They tune out. They assume nothing urgent is being said. More words signal less importance. That's the key. Think about the last time someone said very little, but everyone listened. Their silence gave their words gravity. They didn't compete for attention. They commanded it. You don't need to dominate conversations. You need to punctuate them. Most people overtalk for 3 reasons. They want to be liked. They want to be understood. They want to feel relevant. None of those create leadership. Leadership creates relevance automatically. You have a choice. Chase connection or establish presence. Here's the rule. If a sentence doesn't move the conversation forward, remove it. Not soften it. Not shorten it. Remove it. Leaders are editors of their own speech. Notice this pattern. Followers fill space. Leaders create space. Space gives others room to adjust to you. Talking removes that advantage. Let's talk about conversational dominance. Dominance is not interruption. Dominance is timing. When you speak less, people wait for you. When you speak more, people move past you. You don't need their permission. Make them wait. Here's a practical shift. Stop responding immediately. When someone finishes speaking, pause. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then speak. That pause signals consideration, not confusion. It also tells the room that your words are chosen, not reactive. That's the key. Another mistake people make. They repeat themselves because they think repetition equals emphasis. It doesn't. It signals insecurity. If your sentence is strong, it doesn't need reinforcement. Say it once. Let it land. Let's run an example. Overtalking version. I think we should move forward with this because it aligns with what we discussed earlier, and it seems like the best option considering the constraints and the feedback we received. Leader version. We're moving forward. Pause. if needed. It aligns with the constraints. Stop. That's it. You might be thinking, what if people don't get it? They will. And if they don't, they'll ask. Questions increase your authority. Volunteering excess reduces it. That's discipline. Here's another hard truth. Talking too much is often a coping mechanism. It's how people manage anxiety. It's how they avoid silence. It's how they prove value. Leadership does not prove value. It assumes it. You don't need their permission. Now let's talk about meetings. The highest status person in the room often speaks the least. They listen. They observe. They intervene only when necessary. Why? Because every word they say changes direction. If your words don't change direction, don't say them. Let's give you a framework. Before you speak, ask yourself, does this sentence clarify direction? Does it reduce confusion? Does it move us forward? If the answer is no, stay silent. Silence is not passive. It's strategic. That's the key. Another pattern to eliminate. People narrate their thinking. They say things like, what I'm thinking is, just to walk you through my thought process. So here's how I arrived at this. That's internal processing, externalized. Leaders speak conclusions. They don't live stream cognition. There is a time for explanation, teaching, mentorship, strategy sessions. But leadership moments are not classrooms. They are decision points. Decision points require brevity. Here's a principle you must internalize. The more authority you want, the fewer words you must use. Say it again. The more authority you want, the fewer words you must use. That's the key. Training this will feel unnatural at first. You'll feel like you're withholding. You'll feel like you're underperforming. You're not. You're recalibrating. You have a choice. Endure the discomfort. Or keep leaking power. For the next 7 days, do this. Cut your spoken word count by 30%. Remove fillers like so, basically, and you know. End conversations earlier than feels comfortable. This trains restraint. Restraint creates presence. Notice what changes. People start summarizing for you. They fill silence with their thoughts. They seek your response. That's authority shifting. You didn't demand it. You created space for it. Let me repeat this until it sticks. Say less. Mean more. Let silence do the work. You don't need their permission. This chapter locks in a critical truth. Authority is not volume. It's weight. Weight comes from scarcity. Scarcity comes from discipline. You've now learned to end sentences cleanly. Stop explaining. Control pace. Regulate emotion. Reduce volume. But there's still a leak most people miss. The words that quietly beg for approval. The phrases that undermine everything you've built. Now we remove them. Chapter 6. Remove validation. Seeking phrases. This chapter is about cutting the quiet begging out of your language. Not obvious begging. Subtle begging. The kind that sounds polite. The kind that sounds reasonable. The kind that destroys authority without you noticing. You have a choice. You can speak as if your words stand on their own. Or you can keep asking others, silently, to approve them. That's the key. Validation-seeking phrases are not loud. They hide inside everyday speech. They sound harmless. They sound cooperative. They sound human. And that's why they're dangerous. Because they tell the listener one thing. I'm not fully sure. Please confirm. You don't need their permission. Let's expose them. Phrases like, I think, maybe we could, just to be safe. Does that make sense? Let me know what you think. These phrases soften statements. They open doors. They hand control to the listener. Authority leaks through these openings. Here's the truth. Every time you add I think, you downgrade certainty to opinion. Every time you say maybe, you invite negotiation. Every time you ask, does that make sense? You place yourself below the listener. It's not about politeness. It's about positioning. That's discipline. Let's be clear. Leaders are not arrogant. They are settled. They don't hedge every sentence because they've already done the thinking. Followers think out loud. Leaders speak conclusions. That difference is audible. Why do people use validation-seeking phrases? Fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being challenged. Fear of being disliked. So they cushion statements to reduce risk. But leadership is not risk-free communication. Leadership is responsibility. You have a choice. Protect comfort or project authority. Here's the psychology. When you seek validation, the listener subconsciously assumes there is something to validate. They listen for flaws. They evaluate instead of align. When you speak without validation-seeking language, alignment is assumed. That's the key. Let's run an example. Weak version. I think this is the best option, but let me know what you think. Leader version. This is the best option. Silence. If feedback is needed, you ask for it intentionally, not emotionally, not defensively. Another example. Weak. Maybe we should adjust the timeline. Leader. We're adjusting the timeline. Notice what changed. Same idea, different authority. Now let's address a common excuse. But collaboration matters. Yes, and collaboration does not require verbal submission. You can invite input after stating direction. Example. This is the direction. I'm open to data that changes it. That's leadership. You decide first. Then you listen. Here's the rule you must memorize. Never downgrade a statement unless accuracy requires it. Say it again. Never downgrade a statement unless accuracy requires it. That's the key. Validation-seeking language also appears at the end of sentences. People say, right? Okay? Yeah? Those words turn statements into requests. Cut them. End clean. Statements create authority. Questions create doubt. Another subtle leak. Apologetic openers. Sorry, but I don't want to sound rude, but these phrases assume offense before it exists. You're apologizing for having a position. That's not leadership language. You don't need their permission. Here's something uncomfortable. If you remove validation-seeking phrases, some people will feel uneasy. Why? Because they were used to your softness. They benefited from it. When you remove it, the dynamic changes. That's not your problem. That's growth. Now let's talk about internal validation. Strong speakers validate themselves internally. They don't look for confirmation in real time. They speak from conviction, not consensus. Consensus can come later. Direction comes first. Practical training starts now. For the next 7 days, remove I think from your statements. Eliminate maybe unless discussing probabilities. Stop asking for confirmation after speaking. This will feel exposed. Good. Exposure builds authority tolerance. Notice what happens. People respond more directly. They challenge less emotionally. They take your words more seriously. Not because you changed them, because you changed your framing. Let me repeat this until it locks in. Validation seeking is weakness disguised as politeness. Authority is clarity without apology. You don't need their permission. This chapter removes a critical leak. You now. End sentences cleanly. Stop explaining. Control pace, regulate emotion, speak less, and stop begging for approval. But there's one more layer of power most people ignore. Silence itself. Not accidental silence. Strategic silence. That's where dominance sharpens. Chapter 7. Use silence as a weapon. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. Most people misunderstand silence because they experience it emotionally. Leaders use it strategically. You have a choice. You can rush to fill silence because it makes you uncomfortable. Or you can let silence work on others. That's the key. Here's the truth. The person who breaks silence first usually loses leverage. Why? Because silence creates tension, and whoever resolves tension gives up control. Leaders don't rush to resolve tension. They let it shape the room. You don't need their permission. Most people fear silence because it exposes them. No words, no defense, no distraction. So they talk. They over-explain. They soften statements. They walk things back. And in doing so, they erase everything they just built. Silence would have protected them. Let's talk about psychological weight. When you speak and then go silent, your words expand. They echo. They force processing. When you speak and immediately continue, your words collapse into noise. Silence is the amplifier. That's the key. Watch how silence shifts power. You make a statement. You stop. You look calm. Now the pressure moves outward. Others feel compelled to respond, to justify, to clarify. You are no longer performing. You are observing. That's leadership positioning. Here's a hard truth. Silence feels awkward only to people who seek approval. If you need reassurance, silence feels dangerous. If you are grounded, silence feels neutral. You have a choice. Train your nervous system to tolerate silence, or keep talking yourself out of authority. Let's clear a misconception. Silence is not passive. Silence is active restraint. It's a decision not to interfere, and restraint is a form of dominance. Think about high-stakes situations, negotiations, confrontations, critical meetings. The strongest move is often doing nothing. No reaction, no clarification, no emotional display, just stillness. Stillness unsettles people who are used to control. Here's how silence works psychologically. People project into it. They assume confidence. They assume certainty. They assume authority. Because silence doesn't contradict itself. Words do. Most people talk to manage their own discomfort. Leaders stay silent to manage the room. That's discipline. Let's talk about silence after speaking. This is where most people fail. They make a strong statement. Then they panic. Then they explain. That second wave destroys the first. Silence would have sealed it. Statements create authority. Silence confirms it. Say it again. Statements create authority. Silence confirms it. Another mistake. People respond too quickly. Someone challenges them. They jump in immediately. That signals emotional reactivity. Pause instead. Even 2 seconds changes the dynamic. It tells the listener, I'm not rushed. I'm not threatened. You don't need their permission. Now let's talk about silence during conflict. When someone is emotional, silence is grounding. It refuses escalation. It refuses chaos. If you stay calm and quiet, the other person either slows down or exposes themselves. Either outcome benefits you. Here's the rule. Never compete with noise. Noise feeds on reaction. Silence starves it. That's the key. Practical training begins now. For the next 7 days, pause after every important sentence. Do not fill silence unless clarity is required. Let others speak first after your statements. This will feel unnatural. Good, you are rewiring authority tolerance. Expect pushback. People may ask, are you okay? They may try to fill the space for you. They may escalate. Stay still. Silence is not weakness. It's containment. Here's something powerful. When you master silence, people start talking for you. They justify. They explain. They negotiate against themselves. You gain information without giving anything up. That's leverage. Let me say this clearly. You don't win conversations by saying more. You win by saying less and choosing when to stop. Silence is the stop. This chapter teaches one thing. Silence is not absence of communication. It is the highest form of it. When used correctly, it multiplies everything you've learned so far. You now know how to end sentences, stop explaining, control pace, regulate emotion, reduce volume, remove validation-seeking language, and use silence strategically. Now we move into decision-making language. Because silence without decisiveness is emptiness. Next, we train finality. Chapter 8. Speak from decisions, not options. This chapter separates leaders from participants. Because nothing kills authority faster than sounding undecided. You have a choice. You can speak like you're still considering, or you can speak like you've already decided. That's the key. Most people speak in options by default. They present possibilities. They float ideas. They keep doors open just in case. They think this makes them flexible. It doesn't. It makes them forgettable. Leaders don't sound flexible. They sound settled. Here's the core problem. Options invite debate. Decisions create direction. If you speak in options, people feel free to argue. If you speak in decisions, people adjust. You don't need their permission. Listen to how option-based language sounds. We could do this. One option might be, we're thinking about maybe. That language communicates one thing. I haven't decided yet. You can influence me. Sometimes that's appropriate. Leadership moments are not those times. Leaders think in options privately. They speak in decisions publicly. That distinction matters. Thinking is internal. Speaking is directional. Followers externalize thinking. Leaders externalize conclusions. That's discipline. Here's the psychology. When someone speaks from a decision, the listener's brain shifts into alignment mode. They ask, how do we execute? When someone speaks from options, the listener's brain shifts into evaluation mode. They ask, is this good? Should we change it? Evaluation weakens momentum. Direction creates movement. Let's run an example. Option-based. We could potentially move the deadline if needed. Decision-based. The deadline is moving. Pause. If context is required, it aligns with current capacity. Stop. Same information. Different authority. Another example. Option-based. We might want to reconsider this approach. Decision-based. We're reconsidering this approach. Notice the difference. One invites debate. The other signals action. Now here's the mistake people make. They fear being wrong, so they protect themselves with options. But leadership is not about being right every time. It's about deciding and correcting fast if needed. Indecision costs more than adjustment. That's the key. You have a choice. Sound safe or sound decisive. Safety feels comfortable. Decisiveness creates trust. People trust leaders who decide, even imperfectly, more than those who hesitate perfectly. Let's address flexibility. Speaking from decisions does not mean rigidity. It means clarity. You can always revise a decision, but you cannot revise confusion. Here's the rule you must internalize. If you want movement, speak in outcomes, not possibilities. Say it again. If you want movement, speak in outcomes, not possibilities. That's the key. Now let's talk about tone. Decision-based speech is calm, flat, settled. It does not rush. It does not explain excessively. It does not defend itself. It assumes execution. That assumption alone elevates authority. Here's what happens when you shift to decision language. People stop brainstorming at you. They start working with you. They ask logistical questions instead of philosophical ones. Why? Because the frame has changed. Another subtle leak. People add escape clauses. Unless something changes? But we'll see. For now, these phrases reopen decisions. Use them only when uncertainty is real and relevant. Otherwise, cut them. Finality is felt. Practical training begins now. For the next 7 days, replace "we could" with "we will" where appropriate. Remove "might" and "maybe" from directional statements. Speak as if execution is already underway. This will feel bold. Good! Boldness trains authority tolerance. Expect resistance. Some people will push back. Some will test you. Some will ask for justification. Stay grounded. Decisions don't argue. They hold. You don't need their permission. Here's something important. Decision-based speech reduces anxiety in others. Why? Because clarity is calming. Uncertainty creates stress. Direction reduces it. People follow the person who reduces uncertainty. Let me repeat this until it locks in. Options invite debate. Decisions create direction. Say it again. Options invite debate. Decisions create direction. This chapter teaches one thing. Leadership is audible through decisiveness. If your language sounds undecided, your authority collapses. If your language sounds settled, people adjust. You've now learned to end sentences cleanly, stop explaining, control pace, regulate emotion, reduce volume, remove validation-seeking phrases, use silence strategically, speak from decisions. Now we move to pressure, because authority that collapses under stress is not authority. Next, we test stability. Chapter 9. Control your voice under pressure. Pressure is the truth serum. It doesn't create habits. It exposes them. You don't find out who you are when things are calm. You find out when stakes rise, time compresses, and eyes are on you. You have a choice. You can let pressure hijack your voice, or you can use pressure to prove control. That's the key. Most people believe pressure changes them. It doesn't. Pressure removes the mask. When pressure hits, tone rises, speed increases, language softens or sharpens emotionally, and the room notices immediately. You don't need their permission. You need regulation. Here's the core problem. Under stress, people speak from adrenaline instead of intention. Their voice tightens. Their sentences shorten erratically. Their emotions leak through volume and pitch. Even when the decision is right, delivery collapses. Authority doesn't survive that. Let's be precise. There are 3 vocal tells under pressure. Rising pitch, accelerated speed, compressed breathing. Each one signals loss of control. And control is what people look for most under stress. Think about crisis moments, deadlines slipping, conflict escalating, unexpected challenges. The person whose voice stays flat and slow becomes the anchor, not because they're smarter, but because they're regulated. Regulation creates trust. That's discipline. Here's the rule you must internalize. Your voice must get calmer as pressure increases. Say it again. Your voice must get calmer as pressure increases. That's the key. Most people do the opposite. They speed up to handle it. They talk more to fix it. They explain to calm things down. It backfires. Fast speech spreads anxiety. Emotional tone amplifies chaos. Leaders absorb pressure. They don't reflect it. Let's talk about physiology. When pressure hits, your body prepares for action. Heart rate rises. Breathing shortens. If you speak from that state, your voice exposes it. So the first step is not verbal. It's physical. Control the breath. Control the voice. Control the room. Here's a simple correction. Before speaking under pressure, inhale through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold for 2. Exhale slowly for 6. Then speak. This lowers pitch, slows pace, signals calm. You don't need their permission. Now let's talk about tone. Under pressure, many people become sharp. They think sharpness equals authority. It doesn't. Sharpness feels reactive. Calm firmness feels decisive. There's a difference. Anger sounds unstable. Calm sounds final. Another mistake. People raise volume under pressure. They think being louder cuts through chaos. It doesn't. It adds to it. Lower volume forces attention. People have to listen. Silence plus calm volume beats shouting every time. That's the key. Let's run an example. Pressure situation. Weak response. Okay, listen, this is important. We need to fix this right now because this can't keep happening. Leader response. Pause. This stops now. Pause. We're adjusting the process. That's it. Notice the contrast. Same urgency. Different control. Here's what pressure really tests. Whether your authority is rehearsed or embodied. Anyone can sound calm when things are easy. Only leaders sound calm when things aren't. You have a choice. Train now or leak later. Let's address confrontation. When challenged directly, most people react emotionally. They defend. They explain. They justify. That's instinct. Leadership overrides instinct. Pause first, then respond. Even 1 second changes everything. Here's a rule. Never answer pressure with speed. Say it again. Never answer pressure with speed. Answer with stillness. Stillness disarms. Now let's talk about consistency. If your voice changes drastically under pressure, people lose confidence. They think, if he's rattled, should I be worried? Stability in voice equals stability in leadership. That's why consistency matters more than perfection. Another hard truth. People forgive wrong decisions faster than unstable delivery. Why? Because unstable delivery makes them feel unsafe. Safety drives followership. Practical training begins now. For the next 7 days, lower your voice when stressed. Slow your response time by 2 seconds. Reduce emotional language to 0 under pressure. This will feel unnatural. Good. Pressure training always does. Expect internal resistance. Your body will want to react. Your mouth will want to fill space. Hold. Stillness is strength. You don't need their permission. Notice what changes. People mirror your calm. Tension diffuses faster. You become the reference point. That's leadership under pressure. Let me repeat this until it locks in. Pressure does not demand more words. It demands more control. Your voice is the control surface. This chapter teaches one thing. If your voice collapses under stress, your authority collapses with it. If your voice stays steady, everything else stabilizes. You've now learned to end sentences, stop explaining, control pace, regulate emotion, reduce volume, remove validation-seeking language, use silence, speak from decisions, and hold control under pressure. There is one final layer, consistency over time. Because authority is not built in moments, it's built in patterns. Now we lock it in. Chapter 10. Become predictably grounded. This is where leadership becomes permanent. Not dramatic, not situational. Predictable. You don't earn authority by being impressive once. You earn it by being reliably grounded every time. You have a choice. You can be intense sometimes and unstable others, or you can become the person whose presence never fluctuates. That's the key. Most people chase peak performance. Leaders build baseline control. They don't spike emotionally. They don't disappear under pressure. They don't shift personalities based on the room. They are the same, calm, deliberate, settled. Predictability is not boring. Predictability is trust. Here's the truth. People don't follow energy. They follow stability. Energy excites. Stability reassures. And reassurance is what people look for when things matter. You don't need their permission. You need consistency. Let's define what predictably grounded means. Your tone stays steady. Your pace stays controlled. Your language stays clean. Whether things are easy or chaotic. That's not talent. That's discipline. Most people leak authority because they are inconsistent. One day calm, next day reactive. One conversation clear, next conversation emotional. People don't know what version they'll get, and unpredictability destroys trust. That's the key. Leaders reduce uncertainty simply by being the same person repeatedly. Same delivery, same restraint, same presence. Not rigid, stable. Here's the psychology. When people know how you'll respond, they feel safe around you. When they feel safe, they follow direction without resistance. Consistency lowers friction. Inconsistency creates doubt. Let's talk about identity. At this point, you are no longer using techniques. You are becoming someone who speaks this way by default. This is not performance. This is conditioning. You have a choice. Practice until it's automatic, or revert when pressure fades. Here's a hard truth. Authority is fragile until it becomes habitual. One emotional outburst can undo weeks of control. One rushed explanation can reopen old dynamics. That's why repetition matters. Now let's lock in the habits. Your new baseline. Sentences end clean. Explanations are minimal. Pace stays slow. Emotion stays regulated. Words are scarce. Silence is comfortable. Decisions sound final. Pressure does not change your voice. This is not a checklist. This is a standard. People will test this. They will provoke. They will push. They will wait for cracks. Not consciously, instinctively. When you don't crack, something shifts. They stop testing. That's authority settling in. Here's the part most people miss. You don't need to assert leadership. If your behavior is consistent, leadership is assumed. Consistency removes the need for dominance. Let me say this clearly. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of training. That's the key. Training never stops. Not because you're weak, because habits decay without reinforcement. So here's your long-term discipline. Every day ask yourself, did my voice stay calm? Did my words stay few? Did I let silence work? Did I speak from decisions? If the answer is yes, you're building something permanent. Expect something subtle to happen. People will stop questioning tone. Stop interrupting. Stop challenging emotionally. They'll still disagree, but differently, with respect. You don't need their permission. You've earned position through behavior. This audiobook was never about talking louder or sounding confident. It was about removing weakness from your delivery. Weakness in endings. Weakness in explanations. Weakness in speed. Weakness in emotion. Weakness in volume. Weakness in validation. Weakness in pressure. What remains is clarity. Let me repeat the core truth one last time. Leadership is not what you say. It's how consistently you say it. Predictability builds trust. Trust creates followership. This is your challenge. From this moment forward, become boringly stable. Same voice, same pace, same restraint. Every room, every conversation, every day. Talk like a leader and let the world adjust. Leadership is not granted. It's heard. Every time you speak, people decide whether to follow you, test you, or ignore you. Not based on your ideas, but on how grounded your words sound. Not on your knowledge, but on how final your sentences feel. You don't need to speak more. You need to speak cleaner, slower, with fewer words and zero need for approval. From this moment forward, listen to yourself. Remove the questions. Cut the explanations. Let silence do the work. Because the world does not reward potential. It responds to presence. Talk like a leader, starting now, or stay comfortable being treated like a follower.